There is a pervasive myth in modern society that financial distress is a moral failing. When we find ourselves stressed about money, when the end of the month arrives faster than the next paycheck, or when a sudden car repair sends us into a spiral of anxiety, we are taught to blame ourselves. We assume we are simply not working hard enough, not earning enough, or lacking in basic discipline. We believe that if we were just a little luckier or just a little less lazy, the crushing weight of financial unpredictability would vanish. This audiobook exists to completely shatter that illusion. Your financial struggles are not a matter of luck. They are not a symptom of laziness. They are the direct mathematical result of poor system design. You are operating a financial machine that was structurally built to leak, and you are blaming yourself for getting wet. Most people measure their financial success by a single, highly flawed metric: their salary. We are culturally conditioned to believe that a high income is the ultimate cure for financial anxiety. But a salary is nothing more than a number that tells you what you earn. It is a temporary, isolated burst of capital. A salary does not dictate what you keep. It does not dictate what you build. And it absolutely does not dictate whether you are financially free. You can earn a massive income and still be completely trapped. If your financial life lacks an intentional architecture, your money will simply follow the path of least resistance. It will evaporate into lifestyle inflation, vanish through small daily conveniences, and be siphoned away by endless subscriptions and impulsive upgrades. You end up pouring water into a bucket with no bottom, pedaling faster and faster on an exhausting treadmill just to avoid falling backward. The alternative to this exhausting cycle is a concept we will call cash flow mastery. Cash flow mastery is not about clipping coupons, adopting extreme frugality, or meticulously obsessing over every single cent you spend. It is not a restrictive, punishing diet for your wallet. Instead, it is a profound rewiring of your financial thinking. It is the transition from being a passive recipient of income to becoming an active architect of a comprehensive financial system. A system determines what happens to your money after it arrives. A system creates intentional, automated channels that direct your capital toward security, growth, and freedom, long before your emotional impulses have a chance to interfere. When you build a robust financial system, you are no longer relying on daily willpower to make good choices. You are relying on structure. Over the course of this journey, we will dismantle the incomplete equations you were taught about money. We will show you how to gain total visibility over your capital, how to give every dollar a job before it hits your bank account, and how to fundamentally decouple your financial security from your daily labor. You will learn how to transition from defensive saving to offensive cash flow generation, utilizing true leverage to build wealth that works independently of your time. Most importantly, we will teach you how to build a nervous system that is calm, because it intrinsically trusts the architecture that supports it. Freedom is not found in a higher salary. Freedom is found in a better system. Let us begin building yours. Chapter 1: The Incomplete Equation and the Trap of More. From the moment we are old enough to understand the concept of a dollar, society begins programming us with a very specific, highly destructive financial equation. It is drilled into us by our parents, reinforced by our educational systems, and celebrated by our culture. The equation is incredibly simple. Work, earn, spend, repeat. You are taught to trade your finite time and physical energy for a paycheck. You receive that paycheck. You pay your mandatory living expenses. You spend whatever is left on lifestyle, comfort, and entertainment to recover from the stress of the work you just did. And then you wake up and do it all over again. The fundamental flaw in this traditional equation is that it focuses entirely on the acquisition of money while completely ignoring the architecture of money. It treats the arrival of your salary as the finish line of the financial race. But in the realm of true wealth building, the moment the money hits your account is not the end of the process. It is merely the starting line. When you operate on the work, earn, spend, repeat model, you are dealing with undirected capital. And undirected capital obeys the laws of physics. It always follows the path of least resistance. If you do not give your money a specific structural destination, the exact second it arrives, it will inevitably evaporate. It will leak out through small, daily conveniences. It will vanish into forgotten subscriptions, impulse purchases, and frictionless digital transactions. You will reach the end of the month, look at your bank statement in bewilderment, and wonder where the thousands of dollars you earned actually went. Because of this constant evaporation, you begin to believe a dangerous lie. It is the lie that keeps highly educated, high-income professionals completely broke. If I just earned a little more money, all my financial stress would disappear. This belief is a psychological trap. Earning more money without fundamentally changing your underlying financial structure does not solve your problems. It simply creates a much larger, more expensive version of the exact same trap. When you believe that income is the ultimate cure, you fall victim to the silent killer of wealth, lifestyle inflation. Imagine you receive a significant promotion at work. Your salary increases by 20%. For a brief, fleeting moment, you have a financial surplus. But because your brain is running the traditional equation, you immediately interpret this new income as permission to increase your consumption. You tell yourself that you have worked hard and you deserve a reward. So, you upgrade your life. You trade in your perfectly functional car for a luxury vehicle with a much higher monthly payment. You move from a comfortable apartment to a more expensive house and a better zip code. You upgrade your wardrobe, your vacations, and your dining habits. You have just committed a fatal strategic error. You have taken a temporary financial gain, a higher salary, and converted it into permanent, fixed monthly obligations. The moment you sign that new lease or take on that new car loan, your baseline for survival violently shifts upward. You did not buy freedom with your raise. You bought a more expensive cage. Your financial margin, the critical, life-giving space between what you earn and what you owe, remains exactly the same as it was before the promotion, or it actually shrinks. This is why you see doctors, lawyers, and corporate executives earning $300,000 a year who are living paycheck to paycheck, suffocating under the weight of their own lifestyle. They have locked in such massive, fixed costs that they must maintain elite, exhausting levels of performance every single day just to survive. If they lose their job, or if they decide they want to step back and spend more time with their family, their entire financial ecosystem will collapse within 60 days. They are high-income earners, but they are absolutely poor in freedom. To escape this treadmill, you must violently separate two concepts in your mind: income and cash flow. Income is what you receive from your employer. It is a gross number. It is largely a vanity metric. Cash flow is what you actually control. It is the deliberate, structural movement of money through your life. Mastery requires recognizing that a surge in income is useless if your outflow expands to perfectly match it. Cash flow mastery begins with the absolute refusal to let money follow the path of least resistance. It requires you to stop viewing an increase in salary as an excuse to inflate your lifestyle and start viewing it as raw material to construct your financial fortress. Security must always be funded before comfort. The system must be strengthened before the ego is rewarded. You cannot hustle your way out of a bad financial system. You must architect your way out. And that architecture begins with total visibility, which we will construct in the next chapter. Chapter 2. The Foundation of Visibility. Before a general can draft a strategy to win a war, they must first possess an accurate map of the battlefield. They must know exactly where their troops are positioned, where the enemy is fortified, and where the terrain is fragile. Attempting to execute a military campaign without this foundational intelligence is not just foolish, it is suicidal. Yet, this is exactly how the vast majority of people manage their financial lives. They operate in a state of perpetual heavy fog. They vaguely know their annual salary, and they have a rough, optimistic estimate of their major bills, but they are completely blind to the microscopic daily movements of their capital. They are trying to command an army in the dark. The absolute first law of cash flow mastery is this: you cannot command what you cannot see. Financial anxiety is rarely born from a lack of money. It is almost always born from a lack of clarity. When you do not know exactly what it costs to keep your life running, your nervous system interprets that unknown variable as a constant looming threat. You dread checking your bank account balance. You hold your breath when swiping your credit card at the grocery store. This ambient financial dread drains your cognitive bandwidth and leaves you exhausted. To dissolve this fog, you must execute a structural intervention. You must establish a baseline of truth. This requires implementing the 30-day judgment-free tracking framework. For the next 30 days, you are going to record every single dollar that exits your life. You will not rely on automated budgeting apps that miscategorize your spending. You will actively, manually review your transactions. However, there is a critical psychological rule to this exercise. You must do it with zero self-judgment. Shame is the ultimate enemy of data collection. If you look at a massive restaurant bill or an impulsive online purchase and immediately begin berating yourself, your brain will subconsciously start avoiding the exercise. You will stop tracking to avoid the emotional pain. For these 30 days, you are not a judge. You are a forensic accountant. You are a scientist observing an experiment. Your only goal is to gather objective, unemotional data about your current reality. As you collect this data, you will organize it into 4 distinct categories. This categorization is not just accounting, it is the architectural blueprint of your future system. Category 1. Essential fixed costs. These are the unyielding pillars of your survival. Rent or mortgage payments, basic insurance premiums, and minimum debt obligations. These numbers are completely predictable and absolutely mandatory. They are the non-negotiable bedrock of your financial baseline. Category 2. Essential variable costs. These are the requirements for living that fluctuate in price. Groceries, basic utilities, and fuel for your commute. You must buy food to survive, but the exact cost changes depending on your choices and market forces. Tracking this category reveals your average consumption and highlights where a financial buffer will eventually be necessary to smooth out the unpredictable spikes in utility bills or gas prices. Category 3. Non-essential fixed costs. This is where the silent bleeding occurs. These are the recurring monthly obligations that are not required for your survival, but have been automated into your life. Gym memberships you rarely use, premium streaming services, software subscriptions, and upgraded digital storage. Because they are automatically deducted, they vanish from your conscious awareness. They represent structural leaks in your system. A $10 subscription seems irrelevant on a daily basis, but it is $120 of capital permanently diverted from your wealth-building engine every year. Category 4. Non-essential variable costs. This category is the financial Wild West. Dining out, entertainment, impulsive clothing purchases, ride shares, and weekend trips. This is the domain of emotional spending, stress relief, and status signaling. This is exactly where the biggest, most destructive leaks hide. When people wonder where their massive salary went at the end of the month, the answer is almost always buried in the chaos of the non-essential variable category. By the end of the 30 days, the fog will have lifted. You will hold in your hands a brutally honest, high-definition map of your financial battlefield. You will know your exact survival number, the sum of your essentials, and your lifestyle number, the sum of your non-essentials. This clarity is incredibly empowering. It strips away the ambient anxiety of the unknown. Once you have complete visibility over where your money is currently flowing, you finally possess the tactical intelligence required to start telling it where to go. You are no longer guessing. You are ready to command. Chapter 3. Giving money a job before it arrives. There is a pervasive and incredibly destructive myth in personal finance that sounds perfectly logical on the surface. It is the concept of saving what is left at the end of the month. The theory assumes that if you simply try your best to be responsible, pay your bills on time, and exhibit a moderate amount of willpower, there will naturally be a surplus of cash waiting for you in your checking account on the 30th day. If you have ever attempted to manage your money this way, you already know the brutal reality. There is never anything left. This failure is not a testament to your lack of discipline. It is a testament to Parkinson's Law. In business and time management, Parkinson's Law dictates that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. In personal finance, the law is equally ruthless. Expenses naturally expand to consume the available income. If you leave money sitting in a primary checking account, your brain perceives a false sense of abundance. It looks at the balance, registers a surplus, and unconsciously lowers your resistance to spending. That leftover money will inevitably be absorbed by an extra dinner out, a random online purchase, or a weekend upgrade. To achieve cash flow mastery, you must completely invert the traditional sequence. You must abandon the failed model of earn, then spend, then save what remains. Instead, you must aggressively install the architecture of the wealthy. Earn, then allocate immediately, then spend what remains. The foundational rule of this new architecture is simple but absolute. Every single dollar must be assigned a specific job before it ever hits your bank account. Unemployed dollars are highly dangerous. When money lacks a clear directive, it wanders. It gets bored. It finds its way into the registers of coffee shops and the balance sheets of massive e-commerce companies. You must become a strict manager of your capital. The moment your paycheck is issued, those dollars should be immediately deployed to their designated stations. Some are dispatched to pay down debt. Some are sent to guard the fortress as emergency savings, and others are deployed as foot soldiers into investment accounts to capture compounding interest. Only after the capital has been strategically deployed do you interact with the remainder. The money left in your checking account after this immediate allocation is your true guilt-free spending allowance. Because the system has already secured your future, you can spend the remainder with zero ambient anxiety. At this point, a very common, highly paralyzing objection arises. The amateur mind says, "This sounds great, but I barely make enough to survive right now. I will build this allocation system when I get a raise. I will do it when I have more money." This is a fatal trap. Waiting until you have more money to build a financial system is like waiting until you are in elite physical shape before you start going to the gym. It completely misunderstands the mechanics of cause and effect. You do not build the system because you are wealthy. You become wealthy because you built the system. Structure matters the most when capital is scarce. If you cannot successfully manage and allocate $1,000, you will absolutely destroy $10,000. The complexity of your financial life only increases as your income increases. Setting up the rule today, even if you are only allocating 1% of your income to savings or debt payoff, is non-negotiable. Rules do not require wealth, they require commitment. You are not just saving a few dollars, you are digging the structural trenches. When the heavy rains of a higher salary eventually come, the pipeline will already be in place to capture the flow, rather than letting it wash away your foundation. However, relying on yourself to manually transfer this money every time you get paid is a recipe for failure. Human beings are biological organisms subject to fatigue, stress, and emotional volatility. If you have to manually execute your financial plan on a Friday afternoon after a grueling, exhausting week at work, your willpower will collapse. You will convince yourself that you need a break this month and skip the transfer. The ultimate key to this pillar of mastery is automation. Automation is the relentless, emotionless robot that executes your strategy perfectly every single time without ever asking how you feel. You must leverage the tools provided by your employer's payroll department and your banking institutions to route your money automatically. You set up direct deposit splits. You configure automatic transfers that trigger the exact morning your paycheck clears. By the time you wake up on payday, pour your coffee, and check your phone, the heavy lifting has already been done. Your debt has been paid. Your investments have been funded. Your savings have grown. The system executed the strategy while you slept. You have removed the single greatest point of failure in personal finance, yourself. You have given every dollar a job, and you have automated the execution. You are no longer hoping to have money left over. You are mathematically guaranteeing your own progress. Chapter 4: The Psychology and Identity of Spending. You can design the most mathematically perfect financial architecture in the world. You can build the spreadsheets, automate the transfers, and establish the structural channels described in the previous chapters. However, if you do not simultaneously address the invisible psychological forces operating beneath the surface, your brilliant system will eventually collapse. The collapse will not happen because of a math error. It will happen because of an identity conflict. Every human being carries a deep, often unconscious narrative about who they are in relation to money. This narrative is formed in childhood, shaped by observation, and hardened by past financial mistakes. If your deeply held internal belief is, "I am just fundamentally bad with money," or "people like me do not get ahead," your brain will treat that belief as an absolute command. When your financial reality begins to improve, when your automated system actually starts building a surplus, your brain will experience severe cognitive dissonance. It will look at the growing bank balance and sound an alarm. because the external reality no longer matches your internal identity. To resolve this discomfort, your subconscious will initiate quiet, highly effective self-sabotage. You will suddenly forget to review your budget. You will justify an entirely irrational purchase, or you will dismantle your automation. You will actively destroy your own progress simply to prove your internal narrative right. To achieve enduring cash flow mastery, you must realize that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. By executing the tracking exercises and setting up the automated rules, you are not just managing capital. You are actively forging a new identity. You are gathering irrefutable, daily evidence that you are a competent, strategic architect of your own wealth. But to protect this new identity, you must confront the primary mechanism of self-sabotage: expressive spending. The vast majority of modern consumption has absolutely nothing to do with basic utility. When you buy groceries or pay the electric bill, that is transactional spending. It is a simple exchange of capital for survival. But when you are exhausted from a brutal 50-hour work week and you impulsively buy a $300 watch online at midnight, that is not transactional. That is expressive. We use money as a tool to regulate our emotions and communicate our status. We spend to medicate the stress of jobs we dislike. We spend to signal success to people we barely know. We spend to purchase the artifacts of the person we wish we were. If you look closely at the non-essential variable category from your tracking exercise, you will not just find numbers. You will find a highly detailed map of your emotional vulnerabilities. The amateur attempts to fix this by deploying extreme, punishing restriction. They declare a complete ban on all discretionary spending. But because the underlying emotional need has not been addressed, the pressure simply builds until they inevitably snap, triggering a catastrophic binge spending episode. The strategic operator does not rely on restriction. They rely on profound awareness. They wedge a cognitive crowbar between the impulse to buy and the act of purchasing by deploying a ruthless two-question filter before any major non-essential transaction. Question 1. What practical need does this serve? You must force yourself to articulate the literal, physical utility of the item. If you are looking at a luxury vehicle that costs twice as much as a reliable sedan, the practical need is simply moving your body from point A to point B. Both vehicles accomplish this exact identical task. The massive price premium has nothing to do with utility. Question 2. What emotional need is this addressing? This is where you look in the metacognitive mirror. Are you buying the luxury car because you genuinely appreciate the engineering? Or are you buying it because you want your neighbors to think you are wealthy? Are you buying the expensive jacket because it is cold outside? Or are you buying it because your week was agonizing and you are desperately seeking a quick hit of dopamine to feel in control? There is nothing inherently wrong with buying beautiful things or enjoying your wealth. The danger lies in doing it unconsciously. When you force yourself to answer these two questions, you frequently discover that you are using highly expensive financial tools to solve cheap emotional problems. Once you identify that the urge to spend is actually just disguised exhaustion, stress, or a desire for validation, you can solve the root problem directly. You can take a day off. You can have a difficult conversation. You can disconnect from social media. Cash flow mastery requires plugging the emotional leaks in your system. Shift from compulsion to intention. Stop using your hard-earned capital to medicate your stress and start using it to purchase your absolute freedom. Chapter 5. Defense, Offense, and True Leverage. In the pursuit of financial stability, The initial reflex of the responsible individual is to save. We are taught that accumulating cash in a savings account is the ultimate metric of financial maturity. While saving is absolutely a foundational prerequisite, remaining permanently fixated on it is a catastrophic strategic error. To achieve cash flow mastery, you must understand the profound mechanical difference between playing defense and playing offense. Saving is a purely defensive maneuver. When you aggressively allocate your capital to build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, you are not building an engine. You are building a wall. This wall is entirely necessary. It acts as a shock absorber against the brutal, unpredictable volatility of reality. When the transmission in your car inevitably fails, or the medical emergency strikes, or the corporate downsizing eliminates your position, the defensive wall absorbs the impact. It prevents you from being forced into high-interest debt. It stops you from moving violently backward. But a wall, no matter how tall or impenetrable, cannot propel you forward. A wall just sits there. To move forward, to actively conquer territory and build enduring wealth, you must transition to offense. Offense is the deliberate creation of cash flow engines that generate income entirely independent of your daily labor. Most people never make this transition because they are trapped in a deeply flawed paradigm regarding how wealth is actually created. Society glorifies the concept of the linear hustle. We are aggressively conditioned to believe that the only way to increase our output, money, is to linearly increase our input, time, and physical effort. We believe that to make twice as much money, we must suffer through twice as many hours. This linear equation is an industrial age artifact, and it is a biological trap. Your time and your physical energy are fiercely finite resources. If your primary financial strategy relies entirely on increasing your raw input, working more overtime, taking on a second job, grinding through weekends, you will rapidly hit a biological ceiling. You will burn out, your health will collapse, and your income will flatline. The architect of financial calm does not rely on brute force hustle. They rely on the most powerful force in wealth creation, true leverage. Leverage is the deliberate, calculated decoupling of your reward from your effort. It is the tactical execution of a single decision or a single burst of effort that continues paying you back long after the initial work has ended. To master the offensive side of wealth, you must deploy 3 distinct forms of leverage into your financial system. The first is system leverage. This is the use of processes and technology to handle repetition. When you spend 3 hours setting up a flawless automated routing system for your paycheck, you have applied system leverage. You did the work exactly once, but the system will execute perfect financial discipline on your behalf for the next decade, requiring 0 additional calories of effort from you. You have decoupled the outcome, consistent savings and debt paydown, from your daily willpower, effort. The second is time leverage. This is the deployment of capital into assets that compound. When you purchase an index fund, dividend-paying stocks, or a piece of rental real estate, you are buying an engine. The capital you deploy goes to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, generating a return. It does not sleep, it does not require a vacation, and it does not complain. By leveraging time and compound interest, the money you earned yesterday begins paying for your lifestyle today, completely severing the link between your current labor and your current income. The third is decision leverage. Amateurs exhaust themselves making hundreds of micro decisions every week regarding what they can and cannot afford. The strategist makes one massive, foundational decision that permanently eliminates the need for the other 99. Deciding to automatically invest 15% of your income before you ever see it is decision leverage. Deciding to strictly drive cars that you can purchase in cash is decision leverage. You make the hard choice once in a state of calm calculation, and it pays dividends in mental peace and financial security for years. You cannot hustle your way to financial freedom, because hustle requires your constant presence. Freedom requires your absence. Build the defensive wall to protect your baseline, but do not stop there. Pivot to offense. Hunt relentlessly for leverage. Stop trading your irreplaceable hours for dollars and start building the automated, compounding engines that will buy those hours back. Chapter 6: Buffers and the Eradication of Debt. We have established the necessity of a defensive savings wall and the offensive engines of leverage. But even with these components in place, there are two massive structural vulnerabilities that routinely destroy financial systems. The first is the illusion of the unexpected expense. The second is the suffocating weight of consumer debt. To achieve absolute cash flow mastery, you must systematically neutralize both. Let us first address the failure of the amateur budget. Most people attempt to build a budget based strictly on their 30-day recurring expenses. The system works perfectly for about 2 months. Then, in the 3rd month, the car registration is due. In the 4th month, the dog needs a trip to the veterinarian. In the 5th month, the holidays arrive, or a friend invites them to a wedding across the country. The amateur budget violently blows up. The individual panics, labels the event a financial emergency, and immediately raids their defensive savings wall. Or worse, puts the expense on a high-interest credit card. This is a critical failure of categorization. A transmission failure on a 10-year-old car is not an emergency. The holidays occurring in December are not a surprise. These events are not emergencies. They are absolute mathematical certainties occurring on an irregular timeline. They are the predictably unpredictable. To protect your core system, you must construct a dedicated piece of financial infrastructure called the buffer account. The buffer account is a separate, specialized pool of capital, distinct from your primary checking account and entirely separate from your defensive emergency fund. Its sole purpose is to smooth out the jagged edges of irregular expenses. The mathematics of the buffer account are brilliantly simple. You sit down and forecast every irregular, predictable expense for the next 12 months. You calculate the estimated cost of car maintenance, annual insurance premiums, property taxes, holiday gifts, and basic home repairs. You add those figures together to arrive at an annual total. You then divide that annual total by 12. That resulting number is your monthly buffer requirement. You treat this number with the exact same ruthless priority as your rent or mortgage. You automate a transfer for that exact amount into the buffer account the moment you are paid. The psychological transformation this creates is staggering. 6 months later, when the massive $1,200 annual car insurance bill arrives, your heart rate does not spike. You do not feel a rush of ambient dread. You simply transfer the funds from the buffer account to your checking account and pay the bill. What used to be a terrifying financial crisis has been reduced to a boring mechanical transaction. You have successfully engineered anxiety out of the system. With the buffer account securing your perimeter, you must now turn your attention to the ultimate destroyer of wealth: consumer debt. Society often treats debt as a mere mathematical reality, a simple numbers game involving interest rates and minimum payments. But structurally, debt is a severe cash flow problem. If true leverage is the act of using past efforts to pay you today, consumer debt is the exact opposite. It is the violent pre-allocation of your future income to cover your past decisions. When you carry consumer debt, you do not own your future labor. Your future hours, your future stress, and your future energy have already been sold to a credit card company to pay for a vacation you took 3 years ago. Debt permanently destroys your financial margin. To eradicate debt, you must abandon the amateur strategy of paying it with whatever is left and execute a strict 2-step protocol. Step 1. Stop the bleeding. You cannot drain a sinking boat if there is still a massive hole in the hull. Before you aggressively attack the principle, you must permanently balance your inflow and outflow. This means a non-negotiable freeze on accumulating any new consumer debt. If you cannot afford to pay cash for it today, you do not buy it. Period. Step 2. Automate the sequence. Once the bleeding has stopped, you must choose a specific attack sequence. There are 2 primary architectural strategies. The avalanche method. You list all your debts from the highest interest rate to the lowest. You pay the minimum on everything, and you direct every available dollar of offensive capital toward the debt with the highest interest rate. This is mathematically optimal and saves you the most money over time. The snowball method. You list all your debts from the smallest total balance to the largest, completely ignoring the interest rate. You aggressively attack the smallest balance first. While mathematically inferior, this method is highly effective for individuals who need immediate psychological momentum and visible wins to stay motivated. The strategic truth is that which method you choose matters far less than your absolute commitment to the structure. Once you pick your sequence, you automate the payments. You integrate the debt payoff into the earn then allocate immediately architecture discussed in Chapter 3. Removing debt from your life is not a punishment. It is the aggressive reclaiming of your future cash flow. Every dollar of monthly debt obligation you eliminate is a dollar that permanently returns to your command, ready to be deployed toward your ultimate freedom. Chapter 7. The Nervous System and Financial Distraction. To fundamentally change your financial reality, you must first accept a biological truth that traditional economics completely ignores. Money is not just a mathematical concept. It is a deeply physiological experience. Your relationship with capital is permanently wired into your central nervous system. When you operate a chaotic, unpredictable financial system, when you are constantly surprised by bills, unsure of your checking account balance, or relying on debt to survive, your brain does not process this as a simple accounting error. It processes it as a literal, physical threat to your survival. In the presence of this unpredictability, your brain's ancient threat detection center, the amygdala, constantly fires. It floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. You live in a chronic, low-grade state of fight or flight. This is the heavy ambient anxiety you feel in the pit of your stomach when you think about your future. The true danger of this biological state is what happens to the rest of your brain. When the amygdala is hyperactive, it literally diverts blood flow and energy away from the prefrontal cortex, the highly evolved part of your brain, responsible for logic, emotional regulation, and, most importantly, long-term planning. You cannot execute a brilliant 5-year wealth-building strategy when your biology is screaming at you to survive the next 5 hours. Financial stress makes you cognitively short-sighted. It forces you to make poor, reactive decisions because your brain is desperately seeking immediate relief rather than long-term compounding. The standard advice society offers to cure this financial chaos is to simply have more discipline. We are told to grit our teeth, try harder, and use our willpower to resist spending and stick to a budget. This is the discipline myth, and it is a blueprint for inevitable failure. Willpower is not a permanent character trait. It is a finite, depletable biological resource. It operates exactly like a battery. You wake up with a full charge, but every decision you make throughout the day, what to wear, how to navigate a difficult conversation at work, what to eat for lunch, drains the battery. By the time you get home at 6 o'clock in the evening, your willpower battery is entirely dead. This state is known as decision fatigue. If your financial architecture requires you to use willpower to manually transfer savings or resist an online purchase at the end of an exhausting day, your system will shatter. You cannot rely on a depleting resource to secure a permanent foundation. Cash flow mastery requires building a system that assumes you will occasionally be tired, stressed, and emotionally vulnerable. Mastery means building a structure that requires less discipline, not more. You make the strategic decisions once, during a calm moment when your prefrontal cortex is fully engaged, and you let automation handle the execution. You completely remove the need for daily willpower. However, even when individuals attempt to build these systems, they often fall prey to a secondary symptom of an agitated nervous system: financial distraction. When your nervous system is anxious, it craves action. It desperately wants to feel like it is solving the problem. This leads the amateur into an endless cycle of tweaking, optimizing, and changing their financial strategy. They download a new budgeting app every 3 months. They abandon their debt payoff plan to chase a trendy new cryptocurrency. They constantly rewrite their spreadsheets and jump from one financial philosophy to another. This constant switching feels like productive work, but it is actually highly destructive procrastination. It is the illusion of action masking a total lack of structural commitment. Wealth is not built through constant, frantic optimization. Wealth is built through structural stillness. Compounding, whether it is the compounding of investments or the compounding of good habits, requires years of uninterrupted time to work its magic. Every time you tear down your system to chase a shiny new financial tool, you reset the clock to zero. You pay a massive penalty and lost momentum. The architect of financial calm understands that complex systems are inherently fragile. A complex budget with 50 different categories and daily manual tracking requirements might look impressive on a spreadsheet, but it will inevitably break the moment your life gets busy. The most robust financial systems in the world are remarkably simple. They are designed with incredibly low mental overhead. They do not require your daily attention. A truly masterful financial system is one that can easily survive a month where you are completely overwhelmed by a family emergency or a massive project at work, because the automation and the rules carry the weight when your attention is elsewhere. Your goal is not to become a hyperactive day trader of your own life. Your goal is to quiet the noise by automating your allocations, building your buffers, and committing to a simple, unsexy system. You signal to your nervous system that the perimeter is secure. You lower the cortisol. You bring your prefrontal cortex back online. When you stop relying on finite discipline and refuse to be distracted by complexity, you finally achieve the ultimate luxury: a financially quiet mind. Chapter 8: Time Horizons and the Power of Enough. The lens through which you view time dictates the exact quality of your financial decisions. The vast majority of society operates on a severely restricted, highly reactive temporal lens, the 30-day time horizon. When you are trapped in the 30-day cycle, your entire financial existence is reduced to a frantic month-to-month scramble. Your primary objective is simply making it to the next payday without running out of capital. Within this compressed timeline, strategic thinking is utterly impossible. Every unexpected expense feels like an apocalyptic crisis. Furthermore, positive financial actions, like saving $50 or investing $100, feel incredibly insignificant. Over a 30-day horizon, $100 invested changes absolutely nothing about your reality. So your brain quickly dismisses the effort as futile and reverts to immediate consumption. To fundamentally rewire your financial architecture, you must forcefully extend your time horizon. You must transition from a 30-day reactive cycle to a 3 to 5 year strategic timeline. When you stretch the timeline to 5 years, the mathematics of wealth suddenly begin to make sense. That seemingly insignificant $100 monthly investment transforms into a compounding engine that actively alters your net worth. Small, consistent actions are no longer futile. They are the undeniable building blocks of an empire. Equally importantly, short-term setbacks lose their devastating emotional power. A bad financial month is a tragedy on a 30-day timeline. On a 5-year timeline, it is nothing more than a minor, statistically expected blip on an upward trajectory. Extending this horizon requires the mastery of a specific, highly misunderstood capability: delayed gratification. Society often frames delayed gratification as a fixed genetic trait. You are either born with extreme patience, or you are doomed to be impulsive. This is entirely false. Delayed gratification is not a personality trait. It is a highly trainable cognitive skill. And like any muscle, it can be developed through deliberate practice. The architect trains this skill by utilizing 2 distinct methods. The first is the visualization of concrete future outcomes. The human brain struggles to value an abstract future. Retirement or wealth are blurry concepts that cannot compete with the immediate, visceral pleasure of a new purchase today. You must make the future vivid. You use compound interest calculators to see the exact future dollar amount your current discipline is buying. You write down highly specific scenarios of what your debt-free life will physically look and feel like. You make the future target so exceptionally clear that it easily outshines the temporary distractions of the present. The second training method is the deliberate shift from outcome metrics to process metrics. Financial balances are lagging indicators. If you judge your success entirely by how much your investment account grew this week, you will become profoundly discouraged, because wealth takes time to accumulate. Instead, you must measure your success by process integrity. Did your automated transfer execute flawlessly? Did you follow your 2-question filter before buying that expensive jacket? Did you adhere to the system you designed? You must learn to celebrate the absolute consistency of your behaviors, trusting that the lagging financial outcomes will inevitably follow the math. As your time horizon expands and your wealth begins to steadily accumulate, you will immediately encounter the final, most dangerous psychological trap of modern finance: the cultural default of more. We exist in an economic machine that is entirely dependent on endless, uninterrupted consumption. The culture dictates that the goal is always more money, more square footage, more luxury, and more status. But more is a terrifying target because it is mathematically infinite. If your goal is simply more, you are running a race that has no finish line. You will spend your entire life on a treadmill, running at maximum speed, completely exhausted, and you will never actually arrive anywhere. Research consistently demonstrates that once basic security and a reasonable level of comfort are achieved, the correlation between additional money and additional human well-being plummets. The return on investment for your life energy experiences massive diminishing returns. Cash flow mastery requires you to answer a question that the amateur refuses to ask: how much is enough? Defining enough is the ultimate act of financial rebellion. It requires you to calculate the exact cost of your ideal, secure, comfortable life, and then draw a hard boundary line in the sand. When you define exactly what enough looks like, you create a tangible finish line. You build a protective filter against the insidious creep of lifestyle inflation. When you finally reach your definition of enough, you get to do something extraordinary that the constant chasers of more never experience. You get to step off the treadmill. You get to recognize your own achievement, reclaim your finite time, and actually enjoy the freedom you spent your life building. Chapter 9: The Architecture of Security and Multiple Streams. In the discipline of structural engineering, there is a concept known as a single point of failure. It refers to any component of a complex system that, if it fails, will cause the entire system to collapse. Engineers go to extraordinary lengths to eradicate single points of failure. They build backup generators, redundant communication lines, and secondary structural supports. They know that relying on one fragile pillar to hold up a massive roof is an invitation to disaster. Yet, when it comes to personal finance, society actively encourages us to build our entire lives around a massive single point of failure: the sole employer. We are culturally conditioned to seek out a safe and secure full-time job, and then we rely on that single entity for 100% of our capital inflow. We build our mortgages, our car payments, and our family's survival on the assumption that this single pillar will stand forever. But if the economy shifts, if management changes, or if the company downsizes, that single pillar crumbles. The inflow of capital instantly drops to absolute zero, and the entire financial structure violently collapses. In the world of finance, this is known as concentration risk. The architect of financial calm understands that relying on a single income source is not security. It is a highly concentrated, terrifying vulnerability. Multiple streams of income are frequently marketed on the internet as a luxury for the already wealthy or a trendy hack for internet entrepreneurs. This is a dangerous misconception. Multiple streams of income are most urgent for those who currently possess the least security. They are the financial equivalent of structural redundancy. However, building this redundancy must be executed in a highly specific, disciplined sequence. Amateurs attempt to start 5 businesses at once while their primary finances are in chaos, leading to burnout and catastrophic failure across all fronts. The strategist builds the architecture in 3 deliberate stages. Stage 1. Stabilize the primary pillar. You cannot build a new tower on a foundation of quicksand. Before you attempt to generate a second stream of income, you must absolutely secure the first. This means optimizing your current primary job, executing the 30-day tracking framework, establishing your defensive savings wall, and fully funding your buffer account. Your baseline survival must be completely systematized and running on automation before you divert your cognitive energy to new ventures. Stage 2. Skill-based income streams. Once the foundation is secure, you begin building your first redundant pillar. For most people, this does not mean launching a massive startup. It means identifying a high-value skill you already possess and monetizing it outside of your primary employment. This could be consulting, freelance writing, graphic design, or specialized coaching. This is active income. It still requires you to trade time for money, but it fundamentally diversifies the source of your capital. If your primary employer suddenly terminates you, your income drops, but it does not drop to zero. You have a secondary engine already running that can be immediately throttled up to cover the deficit. Stage 3. Semi-passive and structural streams. Skill-based income is a bridge, but it is not the final destination. Because it relies on your active labor, it is still bound by the biological limits of your time and energy. The ultimate architecture of security requires crossing the bridge to stage 3. Semi-passive streams. This is the deployment of the time leverage and system leverage we discussed in Chapter 5. You deploy your capital into dividend-paying index funds, real estate investment trusts, or automated digital products. These structural streams are the true holy grail of financial calm. They do not care if you are sick, if you want to take a month-long vacation, or if the corporate economy is in a recession. They operate mechanically, relentlessly generating cash flow in the background of your life. When you execute this architecture successfully, your financial life begins to resemble an ancient Greek temple. The massive roof of your lifestyle is not supported by one precarious column. It is held aloft by a primary career, a secondary consulting stream, a dividend portfolio, and an automated side business. If a macroeconomic storm blows through and destroys one of the pillars, you do not panic. The building does not collapse. The remaining pillars easily absorb the weight. You simply sweep up the debris, calmly assess the situation, and begin constructing a new column. That is not just wealth. That is the architecture of absolute, unshakable security. Chapter 10. The Compounding of Calm and Lasting Legacy. When you begin installing the architecture of cash flow mastery, you will inevitably encounter a period of intense psychological friction. The shift from reactive, 30-day survival to structured system-based wealth building requires massive cognitive effort. Many people abandon the process during this initial phase because they expect immediate, explosive results. When their bank account does not instantly double, they assume the system is broken and revert to their old, chaotic habits. To survive this friction, you must understand the exact timeline of financial transformation. It does not happen overnight. It follows a highly predictable, multi-year trajectory. Months 1 through 3 are heavily effortful. You are confronting your spending identity, setting up your buffers, and forcing yourself to look at the uncomfortable data of your past choices. The visible financial changes are microscopically small. It feels like you are pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill. Months 4 through 12 are the stabilization phase. The automated transfers are running. The buffer is slowly growing. The friction begins to decrease, but your new habits are still fragile. A major unexpected event can still rattle your confidence, though your emerging system prevents a total collapse. Year 2 is when the math finally becomes visible. The debt avalanche has cleared massive amounts of principal. The investment accounts are showing noticeable growth. The financial stress reduction is palpable, but you are still consciously managing the machinery. But it is in year 3 that the ultimate transformation occurs. This is the phenomenon we call the compounding of calm. By year 3, your nervous system has gathered enough historical data to completely trust the financial architecture you built. You realize that your bills are paid automatically, your future is funded, and your irregular expenses are absorbed by the buffer without a second thought. Money finally stops being loud. It moves completely to the background of your life. The massive cognitive bandwidth that was previously consumed by financial panic is suddenly returned to you. You become a better parent, a more creative professional, and a fundamentally healthier human being, simply because the ambient dread has been permanently eradicated. However, to maintain this state of compounding calm, you must protect your system from both obsession and neglect. The amateur who builds a financial system often swings to extremes. They either obsessively check their investment balances every single morning, living and dying by the daily fluctuations of the market, or they set up their automations and completely ignore them for 3 years, allowing their lifestyle to secretly inflate and their buffers to drift out of alignment with reality. The strategic operator avoids both extremes by adopting the maintenance mindset. They deploy a structured, time-boxed review schedule that keeps the system perfectly calibrated with minimal effort. Weekly, a 5-minute scan. You log into your account simply to ensure there is no fraudulent activity and that no unexpected massive transactions have occurred. Monthly, a 30-minute review. You compare your actual automated allocations against your original plan. Did the buffer transfer execute? Did your spending roughly align with your intentions? Quarterly, a 1-hour deep dive. You ruthlessly audit your non-essential fixed category. You hunt down and execute forgotten subscriptions and assess if your current buffer accurately reflects any new lifestyle changes. Annually, the Strategy Summit. You sit down for a few hours to review your net worth trajectory, adjust your long-term investment allocations, and ask the critical question: does this current architecture still serve the life I actually want to live? By adhering to this rhythm, you build unshakable confidence in your machinery without it consuming your daily life. As we reach the culmination of this framework, you must recognize a profound truth. Cash flow mastery is, ultimately, life mastery. The exact same internal muscles you must develop to manage your capital. Patience, emotional regulation, delayed gratification, and structural design are the exact mechanisms required to build a successful career, a healthy body, and enduring relationships. Money is simply the most immediate, measurable training ground for developing your internal sovereignty. And this sovereignty is your ultimate legacy. True legacy is not just the transfer of a large bank account to the next generation. Inherited wealth without an inherited system is a curse that destroys the recipient. Your true legacy is the silent, powerful example you set. Children do not learn about money from lectures. They learn by observing the baseline expectations of their environment. When they grow up watching you handle capital systematically, calmly, and intentionally, they inherit the framework of freedom. You teach them that they are the architects of their circumstances, not the victims of them. Master the system, reclaim your time, compound your calm, and pass the architecture forward. The system is yours now. We have arrived at the end of our architectural blueprint. Throughout this journey, we have systematically dismantled the dangerous, incomplete equations that society uses to keep intelligent, hardworking people trapped in a perpetual cycle of financial exhaustion. You now understand that relying on the brute force of a higher salary will never permanently secure your freedom, and that depending on the finite resource of daily willpower will inevitably end in failure. You have made the critical cognitive leap from reactive salary thinking to proactive, mechanical, system thinking. But as we close this framework, we must address the ultimate paradox of financial mastery, the paradox of freedom. To the amateur mind, rules, automations, and strict structural boundaries feel incredibly restrictive. They resist setting up a buffer account, refusing to commit to an automated allocation framework because they believe these constraints will rob them of their spontaneity. They want to be free to spend whatever they want whenever the impulse strikes. But living without structure is not freedom. It is simply submitting to the brutal randomness of a reactive existence. When you have no system, you are entirely controlled by your external circumstances. You are at the mercy of the unexpected car repair, the corporate downsizing, the fluctuating economy, and the constant, suffocating anxiety of wondering if you have enough capital to survive the month. Genuine freedom is not the absence of constraints. It is the presence of constraints that you have intentionally chosen. When you build the defensive walls, automate your offensive investments, and meticulously define your own personal enough, you are not building a cage, you are building a fortress. The structure is the exact mechanism that liberates your mental energy. It provides the margin that allows you to make massive life choices, like walking away from a toxic job or moving to a new city from a position of absolute power and preference, rather than a position of desperation. The principles you now hold are simple but profound. Direction matters more than your current arrival. The integrity of your automated system will always defeat the intensity of your hustle. Deliberate structure will always outlast depleting willpower. However, possessing the blueprint is entirely different from pouring the concrete. The greatest danger you face right now is the illusion of progress through consumption. You have consumed this information, and your brain has likely released a satisfying hit of dopamine, making you feel as though you have actually accomplished something. You have not. If you walk away from this and return to your chaotic 30-day financial cycle, this entire experience was nothing more than intellectual entertainment. You must implement. You must trust the integrity of the process over your immediate feelings, and you must give the mechanics of compounding the time they need to work. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait until you receive a raise, and do not wait until your debt is magically gone. You must act right now. Before this day ends, you must execute one small, deeply unsexy structural change. Log into your banking portal and automate a $20 weekly transfer into a brand new buffer account. Download your last 30 days of bank statements and begin your judgment-free tracking. Make one concrete permanent decision today that removes a variable from your financial future. Do not let this transformation dissolve into good intentions. The fog has been lifted. The tools are on the table. The system is yours now. Build it. This concludes our journey today. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this, please leave a like. It really helps the channel. I'd also love to hear your favorite takeaway in the comments below. Subscribe for more audiobooks, and I'll see you in the next one.